Hi everybody, it's Mr. Stevens here. We are back with Son of the Morning Star, Custer and the Little Bighorn by Evan S. Connell. We are going to jump right back in where we left off, so if you haven't listened to the previous editions, make sure you go back and do that so you know what's going on. So without further ado, Son of the Morning Star, Custer and the Little Bighorn by Evan S. Connell, and here we go. Major Reno was said to be, quote, in an excited condition on the hilltop, according to testimony from Lieutenant Winfield Edgerly at the Chicago Court of Inquiry, and was alleged to have fired his revolver at some Indians 1,000 yards away, or about 900 yards out of range. Untrue, responded the major. Quote, I did not fire my pistol. Whether he did or did not, he failed to give the impression that he was in control of himself or his men. It is therefore little surprising that 235 of these men, about 80% of the survivors, later petitioned the President and the House of Representatives, quote, we the enlisted men, the survivors of the battle on the heights of the Little Horn River on the 25th and 26th of June, 1876, of the 7th Regiment of Cavalry, who subscribe our names to this petition, most earnestly solicit that the vacancies among the commissioned officers of our regiment, made by the slaughter of our brave, heroic, and now lamented Lieutenant Colonel George A. Custer, and the other noble dead commissioned officers of our regiment who fell close by him on the bloody field, daring the savage demons to the last, be filled by the officers of this regiment only, that Major M. A. Reno be our Lieutenant Colonel Vice Custer, killed, Captain F. W. Benteen, our Major Vice Reno, promoted. This being a formal petition, Custer is referred to as Lieutenant Colonel instead of General. Although he had reached the rank of Major General during the Civil War, his appointment was brevet, meaning temporary. In 1866, when the Army was reorganized, he had been appointed Lieutenant Colonel of the 7th and was so designated in the official communications. Socially speaking, however, he remained General Custer because it was customary to address an officer by the highest rank he had achieved. The petition continued, explaining that the men understood such promotions would violate established military procedure, but begged to solicit a deviation from the usual rule in recognition of their belief that only the actions of Reno and Benteen had saved them all from death. Shadows creep across the document. Major E.S. Luce, former superintendent of the Custer Battlefield National Monument, noted various irregularities, signatures of men known to have been illiterate, signatures of men on detached service, signatures of 3 men whose names could not be found on any regimental roster, etc. In 1954, Major Luce submitted a photostat of the petition and some other documentary material to the FBI, requesting an analysis of the handwriting. The FBI answered that no definite conclusion could be reached because of the limited amount of comparable handwriting. Nevertheless, quote, variations were noted in the signatures listed below and the corresponding known signatures, which suggest in all probability that the signatures on the petition are forgeries. The FBI listed 79 dubious signatures, and in the opinion of Major Luce, these closely resembled the handwriting of Joseph McMurray, first sergeant of Benteen's H Company. Therefore, it has been argued that Benteen concocted this petition, persuaded and or coerced many enlisted men into signing it, and instructed his devoted sergeant to pad the document with 79 more. This may sound unlikely. Indeed, it does sound unlikely. But devoted subordinates do sometimes fiddle with records, as Americans learn once in a while to their astonishment and dismay. Whether or not the petition was loaded, it had accomplished nothing. General Sherman replied, quote, the judicious and skillful conduct of Major Reno and Captain Benteen is appreciated, but the promotions caused by General Custer's death have been made by the President and confirmed by the Senate. Therefore, this petition cannot be granted. Sherman's brisk, courteous response implies no lack of faith in Reno, but many officers were less politic. Brigadier C.A. Woodruff, who had been a lieutenant in Gibbon's column, corresponded with historian Cyrus Brady in 1904 and had this to say, quote, I conversed with most of the officers of that command at one time or another. while in the field, and nearly all were very pronounced in the severe criticism of Reno. Major Reno was not the only one to break down. Benteen stated that upon reaching the crest of the bluff, he observed Miles Moylan, the gallantly mustached captain of Troop A, blubbering like a whipped urchin, tears coursing down his cheeks. Benteen took command, at least temporarily. Although Reno's behavior will be argued as long as the Little Bighorn is remembered, there has not been much controversy about this moon-faced, pipe-smoking Southerner. Some, but not much. A Chicago Times reporter wrote of Benteen, quote, he has a very juvenile face and head set on a most masculine body. To look at him casually, he might be mistaken for an overgrown drummer boy. In not a single photograph does he look formidable, not even very military. He appears placid, gentle, benevolent, with feminine lips and prematurely white hair. Only after contemplating that orotund face for a while does one begin to perceive something rather less accommodating. Embedded in that fleshy face are the expressionless, agate eyes of a killer. One might compare them to the eyes of John Wesley Hardin or Billy the Kid. Now, this sinister absence of expression could be nothing more than a result of myopia, a condition afflicting him after the Oklahoma Winter Campaign in 1868 and 1869, when he lent his protective goggles to a regimental surgeon. Still, in Civil War photographs, he has almost that same look. His family background suggests affluence. During the 18th century, the Benteens emigrated from Holland, settling in Baltimore, and were so conservative that the American Revolution could not shake their loyalty to the crown. They became music publishers. Stephen Foster was a client. Sometime in the 1830s, Frederick's father moved to Virginia, where he owned 2 slaves, according to the 1840 census, and he could afford to enroll Fred at a private academy. Yet all of this is rather misleading. The elder Benteen painted houses and worked as a storekeeper selling glass, hardware, and paint. As for owning slaves, in Virginia at that time, it was not unusual. In 1849, he moved to St. Louis, perhaps drawn by the wake of the California Gold Rush, and in St. Louis, young Fred went to work, as might be expected, painting houses and signs. When the Civil War erupted, Fred sympathized with the Union, which is surprising if one considers the family's Southern heritage. A natural assumption would be that he detested slavery, but apparently he felt more troubled by the idea of Southern politicians manipulating the war to their personal advantage. In 1897, he told a reporter from the Atlanta Journal that slavery was not the issue, and he went on to say that he had never known an abolitionist in the Union Army. Another factor must have been a young lady from Philadelphia, Catherine Norman, a vehement Unionist whom he would later marry. Whatever the intellectual persuasion, he seems to have been emotionally moved by a Federal defeat at Wilson's Creek near Springfield. He might have participated in this fight. He might only have observed it. He later claimed to have been a spectator, which is improbable. The battle took place in a wooded area 12 miles from town, and nobody with any brains strolls into the woods with a picnic basket to watch a battle. He almost certainly fought with the Union, perhaps as a civilian. Charles K. Mills, who thoroughly studied the incident, thought Benteen might have joined a column which broke and he ran with them. Later, to excuse the shame of this, he claimed he was not involved. If such a scenario is correct, it might be the only time in his life that Benteen ran from a fight. His record is studded with citations for gallantry. What seems beyond dispute is the fact that he felt shocked by the cowardly retreat of Union troops. On September 1st, 1861, he accepted a lieutenancy in Bowen's battalion, which subsequently evolved into the 10th Missouri. The treasonous act enraged his father, who disinherited him, and prayed aloud that a relative loyal to the South would kill him. The elder Benteen allegedly remarked, "I hope the first goddamn bullet gets you." This intransigent old loyalist went to work on a Mississippi steamboat called the Fair Play, which supplied the Confederacy. On August 18, 1862, it was captured by a Union flotilla that included 2 companies of Bowen's Missourians, among them Captain Frederick Benteen. The civilian crew, the Fair Play, was taken to Helena, Arkansas, and there released. all except Chief Engineer T.C. Benteen, who was locked up for the duration. The immediate question, then, is why Benteen the Elder was not turned loose. And we will stop there for the day. Hope you guys are still enjoying the read. I know I am. I find it fascinating. And we will see you soon. Bye, guys.